Hey guys, it's John Cochran from HomeBackers.com, and on this video what I've got for you is we're going to go ahead and explain the whole closing process, in detail of whenever you buy a house, the closing process. So what happens whenever you write a contract on the property and you go through inspections, you get your appraisal and everything. Now you've got to go ahead and take ownership of that property. But how do you do that? So right here I have with me David Hamilton from Buckeye Title. So basically, David, why don't you just go ahead and just tell people very briefly what a title company is and kind of why they need a title company in on a transaction.
Well, one of the things that we do, John, is we will actually get the order from the lender. We will go to the courthouse, we research the recorded documents, we check ownership and liens. Once we get all that back, we will then correspond and communicate with the lender. Then what we will do is the lender will send us all of the documentation. Then we will meet with the buyer, we will sit down, we will explain every aspect of the documentation. We start off with what's known as the settlement statement, which is just a breakdown of all of the monies involved in the transaction. Typically we will get that guideline from the purchase contract.
Okay.
Then we actually start with the actual lender documents, the documents that the lender are requiring so that the borrower can actually borrow the money. Then we will, after that, we submit all the documentations, disperse all of the monies, and then we will take the mortgage and the deed to the courthouse and get that recorded so then the buyer's new ownership is of public record.
Okay.
That's basically what we do in a nutshell.
Okay, so basically a title company, what your guys' job is to make sure that the title is clean and then basically to handle all of the money. So the lender, I'm assuming they wire you the money to go ahead and disperse to everybody so that, whenever the person signs, they're signing their note and everything, you just handle all the monies and make sure that everything's clean.
Absolutely. What we do is the lender will contact us. They will send us the documentation, as I mentioned. Then they do wire us the monies that are involved in it so that we can actually disperse the seller's money to him the day of the closing.
Okay.
We disperse all of the other monies that are involved, make sure that the payoff, if there's a lien against the property, we'll make sure that that payoff is paid off and send the money to that lender so that we are passing clear title to the new buyer.
Cool. So you're just kind of like a middleman, a third party between everybody, and then you just go I'm assuming that whenever you have all these documents, you have the settlement statement which explains all the money that's being transferred and all this and that. You just sit at a big table, I'm assuming. And
yeah, very much like what we're sitting at today. We'll all sit at a table. Typically it would be the buyer and the seller and the real estate agents involved, and then the closing agent will be there. The closing agent will orchestrate everything. They will actually explain all the documentation because the buyer is going to be signing the bulk of it, but the seller will be signing some documentation also. And then what we do is we gather all of that, we gather what monies we need to, and then we disperse the monies that will be involved in the transaction.
Okay, so if I'm buying a house and, obviously I'm assuming there's going to be a somewhat of a lengthy amount of paper to sign and everything. So if I have any questions on any of the lender documents, you're the person that would answer those questions.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we do is we have become very familiar with the documentation. We understand what the lender requires and what they don't necessarily need. So we'll be able to answer those questions right at the table. Worst case scenarios is we may have to make a phone call to the actual lender or the loan officer to get an a question answered
quickly.
Okay.
So basically, guys, that's pretty much it. So that's exactly what a title company is and the closing process whenever you're buying a house. There's no way to go ahead and get around it. If you buy a house, you're going to have to close on it eventually. And, that's exactly what a title company does. And again, just like he said, he's going to go ahead and explain all the documents to you, handle all the money, and make sure that, everybody gets treated right. And then he's also going to go through and make sure there's no liens on your property, and then at the end of the day, whenever all the signatures are there from you, the buyer, and then the seller, then all those documents are going to go ahead and be recorded so that to make this whole thing legit, and then you just bought a house. So David, thank you for coming on video with me, and I think it was pretty powerful for everybody to know all this stuff.
Thanks, John.